I'm selling something that doesn't exist based on an AI image, based on a product that doesn't exist, just based on raw materials and votes. You're basically paying me for something that doesn't even exist. I haven't even made any investment on anything. It's like pure cash. Hi, I'm Diarra Bousso. I'm the founder of DIARRABLU, a fashion company. And today I'm very excited to talk about how I'm using AI to grow liquidity, to improve productivity, sustainability, to optimize for joy, and to really think about what it looks like to update the operating system of the fashion industry.
So, Diarra, you have the distinguished position of you're the second guest we've ever invited back. Okay,
Oh my
so
God. Wait, was the first episode that good?
the
No,
first conversation was
there's
amazing.
a
It's one
reason
of
why
our
you're back.
favorites. Yeah, exactly. Hello. Hello. That's why you're back, is what he said. But here's why you're back, because I've had the privilege, Henrik knows this, or if he doesn't know it, he's about to know it. I've had the privilege of continuing to learn from Diarra at conferences, at community meetups, and things like that. And Diarra's pace of learning, Henrik, has only accelerated. It's remarkable. It's remarkable. I think the first time we spoke with Diarra now, maybe a year ago, a year and a half ago, we talked about her being the founder of the future. And I think one of the things that's really remarkable is the rate of learning. She's a perfect example of how you have to ratchet up the rate of learning. She's demonstrating how much faster the founder of the future needs to learn. So to me, that's what warrants, Diarra, you coming back for a second time, because it's just what you're doing is incredible. It's so inspiring. So can we start with experimentation? Because I know that's kind of the lifeblood of you've actually told me privately, you consider your life to be an experiment. Maybe start there, your life experiment philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that philosophy actually started 12 years ago. As you know, my life completely changed. And I shared this story with Jeremy when we were playing pickleball a few months ago. But I used to be on Wall Street, and then I had got into this crazy accident and lost my memory. And then I was in this recovery phase. And for 6 months, I was just drawing and painting and doing things to just be busy. But I was experimenting with basic stuff. Like I dream of something at night and I wake up and I do it. And that's the experiment is the dreaming. But it became a job description for 6 months. I learned how to train myself to dream. And it was like, I'll be dreaming of a beautiful photograph of a flower. And then on the next day, either with my crutches, I'll go to the garden, take a picture and post it on Tumblr. Or it was just this like very nice, self-fulfilling way of just experimenting things. Like, am I going to be able to do this small thing tomorrow? And then once I did it, it felt really good. And then I would do something else. But that's how my recovery went until I learned how to walk, until I learned how to remember things. And that's just the like, Cliff Notes version. But after that experiment or very difficult phase, I addicted to this idea of just trying things, regardless of the outcome. And just like, whether you manage or not, like there are days when I would make goals at the time and it's like, I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll walk all the way to my parents' room and surprise them. And then I would wake up and I wouldn't be able to walk because I'm paralyzed. Actually, like technically I'm like learning to walk again. But it wasn't a failure. It was like, I'm not there yet. But it was always adding yet afterwards. Like, I can't do it yet. And the yet became my little magic trick for everything. So anytime I faced anything difficult after that, 6 months later, I could walk limping a little bit, but then I fully recovered after like a year. And I started this whole journey of like discovery and experimentation. It wasn't really clear where I was going. I was like fashion, art, education, math, all the things I liked. And it was just a matter of, let me try this thing for a week. Let me try this thing for a month. And I was just trying things. And I spent 5 years doing that, where it's like, let me just book a one-way ticket to Malaysia and see what happens. And I would just do that. And then I would get to Malaysia and I'm like, I don't know anything here. Let me post on Facebook on my wall a status update and see who's here. And then someone would respond and be like, oh, I'm here. Come visit us. I did that and visited like so many countries. Some of them I stayed for 3 months. Some of them I stayed for 1 week. And my parents supported that because they were like, she just recovered from something difficult. She's in her 20s, like whatever. After 5 years, they were like, you need to get your life together. Like, have no more money. Your 401k is finished and you cannot just, you need to do something. I'm like, Mom, I'm very popular on LinkedIn because I'm sharing my experiments and I'm getting all this press and people think I'm cool. She's like, yeah, but you have no money in the bank. So you need to get a life. And that's why I went to Stanford. But yeah, this mindset kind of now is, embedded in how I run this company. And I drank into at first when I just started, it was just me and like my mom, my family was helping me. And the first people I hired, I don't think they fully understood this way of working because there's no idea of failure. Like sometimes, I mean, I keep people very accountable. Like we have KPIs and we want to meet them, but the conversation and the philosophy around things is experimentation, and it starts from any level. So we had a junior marketer, and I remembered recently she had proposed something about TikTok, and I'm like, okay, what are you testing this month? And it's shocking for them that I'm giving them so much freedom. Like, yeah, tests, but don't waste too much money. Like you have to make them small, but you can learn whatever you're saying. Like, oh, we need more founder content. Is Diarra? I'm like, cool. Here's a iCloud folder from my phone. Give me your iClouds. I'll add you to it. So all my photos of what I'm doing every day. Like just now, I was doing my makeup while you guys were here. That was intentional because I want them to post it on TikTok and see what happens. Of me doing
Great.
my makeup right on the podcast because like, we want real, genuine founder content from you. So I'm like, okay, here's a folder. Do it and do it for a week or two and show me what are you testing. And now it's like we want to test if people like your founder content. I'm like, no, that's too vague. Like, what exactly are you testing and what are you measuring? So now everybody in the company thinks that way. It's so annoying because they feel like we're in a lab running experiment. And I use this scientific language with everyone. And it's at first I can see how it's just like so nerdy and lame. But now they're all used to it. And like whenever they say something, you'll hear them catch themselves by, oh yeah, let's test it small first and show DRR. I'm like, cool. It's not even about me anymore. It's just like test things, learn.
What I also like about using the scientific approach, my wife is a molecular biologist, and she taught me the phrase of non-viable, which is sometimes when she's done stuff in the lab and they have protocols, right? So they basically have like a little recipe where they like put stuff in petri dishes, circle it for 30 minutes, look in the microscope and see something happen. More complicated than that. And then sometimes
Molecular biology with Henrik Wordland.
As you're talking, I'm thinking patterns and art.
But what was cool is like sometimes she go back and they go like, how does this experiment that you're, she goes, oh, it's non-viable. And, it wasn't about failure. It wasn't about like, it was just like, I had a thesis, tried it, didn't work out, next thing, right? And I really start to use that also now in entrepreneurship because it's just such a beautiful, non-judgmental way of thinking about doing stuff. It's just a bunch of experiments and some of them work, some of them doesn't.
I love it. And I think for me, that was a mindset I had, but I didn't know it was a thing. If I switch screens, do you see it?
No.
Okay.
But I'm wondering what kind of experiments you're doing now. I'm like,
okay.
if I'm
What is
sitting
this
here
experiment?
with I have a balloon in my hand, it's like, okay, new experiment.
No, I think for me it was like the mindset around it. Like I was doing these experiments in like just how I was thinking. I didn't know it was a thing. And then I read this book called Tiny Experiments, and it's by Anne-Claire Lecompte. And it's basically this approach that when you want to do something in life, at work or whatever, if you approach it as an experiment, there is no failure. Because when you're in the lab and you run an experiment, it's back to what you were saying with non-viable, right? You find the results and they either match your hypothesis or they don't. But when they don't match your hypothesis, you don't go back to your lab partner or your team and say, oh, I failed. It's just an experiment and just data. So that approach made me feel like validated in this way of working because sometimes I had major imposter syndrome, especially when I was hiring people who are way above me in like experience and fashion industry knowledge or supply chain knowledge. And like, I sound a little chaotic to them where it comes across as I'm not like visionary or I'm not a leader because yes, we have our goals and stuff, but I'm always fine tuning things and shifting them a little bit based on what we learn along the way. And for some people, I've had to let them go because when we do an experiment, we get non-viable results. You have to take action. You have to change course. And some people don't like changing course and they like being on top. You've hired me to make decisions. You set the vision at the beginning of the year. This is what we're doing. And then when you want to change course, they look at you like you're this chaotic, inexperienced, young leader who doesn't know anything.
Can we talk for a second about that, Diarra? Because I think actually there's something there because this word experiment can have different connotations. And one connotation is, it's just an experiment, just like shrug your shoulders and no biggie. And if it doesn't work, cool, And that is the non-scientific but colloquial meaning. When most people say experiment, they aren't thinking about rigor, scientific rigor. They're thinking try without regard to the consequences. It's a little experiment, I think there's something really important there, which is it's not frenetic and it's not unorganized. It is rigorous. There is accountability. So how do you bring the rigor? How do you ensure that at a high speed of learning in a high experimentation environment, you are harvesting all of the learning from experiments to inform the next step? Because this is a critical distinction from just a willy-nilly throw spaghetti at the wall, which is not what you're advocating.
Yeah. I think it was very important for when we define these experiments, I'm always using the word, what are we testing? I'm like open to suggestion. And I think I've empowered the team to come to me with ideas. And I remember I was like, I am supposed to be your CEO, but like, I need you guys to manage me. So I need to manage up. And you tell me, like, we set the goals and we set all of these things, but you actually, I'm at your service and you need to manage me for what you need from me to do your job. Because I remember when I first started right after Stanford, right, I was teaching, and then after school, I started the company. But I was really struggling with management because I was trying to tell everyone what to do. So I was micromanaging everyone, but I had no life. I was consistently telling people, it's like I'm telling people to go to the airport, but I'm calling them the Uber. I'm putting their suitcase in the Uber. I'm then taking, like, it was just, I was acting like Google Maps. I was just not working. Versus this time, I'm like, I'm gonna tell you I need to get to Japan. That's the goal. You figure out how to get there and tell me what part of the trip you need me for. And if you get lost, I'm here. So that's kind of the metaphor I've given them. And, I don't know if you want to route it from plane and do, SFO JFK and JFK Tokyo. I don't know if you want to do it by car. And at some point, you're going to need to cross some bridges. I don't know if you're going to build some bridges where they are not, whatever you want to do. But I want to get to Japan by this time and in this way with these results. So they're always specific results. And then as the team reports, or when I have my one-on-ones with people or big strategy meetings, people share ideas and we have this metaphor of like the road they are taking. Like, what are we doing next? We're in JFK now. Where are we going? How do we get to Japan? Sometimes we find out we don't want to go to Japan anymore. And that's very hard for some people because it's like we've been doing all this work to get to Japan and now we realize the treasure is actually, I don't know, in Florida.
Can I ask another question on when you set these things up? Some people also have a difficult time coming up with stuff. And I very much agree there's like a subtlety of people also using this thing, I'm just experimenting with you're experiencing dumb stuff. It isn't just to experiment. It is you experiencing smart stuff, and new original stuff. Have you found a good way of making it easy for people to come up with the tests that are better than just the average, what GPT would suggest?
Yeah, a lot of people on the junior side, oftentimes, I'm not going to lie, I help them with the test because they know what they want to find out, but they don't know how to test it. So like, I know, like, for example, we have a junior marketing assistant and she's like, I've given her the Pinterest. She's like really junior. She just finished college. And this year I gave her the Pinterest account because I don't know, I don't take pictures that seriously, but it's actually very serious and a good source of revenue, but it's not like I'm not putting money behind it. So I was like, you manage the Pinterest and every week at the marketing meeting, you have to speak for 5 minutes in front of all these high leaders, all the marketing team, and to share with us what you're learning on Pinterest. So in the beginning, she would come to these meetings and share things, and she was very focused on the fanciness of it. Like her presentation and her slides were perfect, and it was so beautiful, but the substance was not there. And I had to be like, it's cute what you've done. I can see you spend time, but I'm not really learning something I didn't know from this. And I want you to come to the team, teach us something we don't know. And that made her think about it differently. I'm like, we know you pin on Pinterest. We know it's going to be pins of me or the models in the dresses. Tell me something I don't know. It wasn't even about experiment. It was just tell me something I don't know. So it was more like, how do I dig and find something not obvious? And it pushed her to think differently about trying to impress us with slides versus really, really digging into something that's not obvious. So the first thing she said was the way we caption the pins, whether we link them to a landing page or a product page, affected performance. I didn't know that. So then she brought that into the meeting and she was like, for the next few pins, I want to see how that works. I'm like, what about you decide which hypothesis you want to make? Which do you think works better, to link the pin to the landing page or to the product page? And she said the product page, because people know exactly what they want to shop for and they want the pin to just link to it. Like, okay, so let's test that. She still didn't understand what I was asking her to do because they are so used to like serving you a final product and impressing you. And for me, it was like, you're going to impress me when you bring me things where I can ask follow-up questions, because that means you're telling me something new. And that became a new way of thinking.
Okay, so folks who are just sidebar for folks who are listening right now going, wait, isn't this beyond the prompt? Aren't these guys
Wait.
supposedly
Yeah,
into AI?
we went off topic a little bit. Sure.
No, we didn't know. What I'm doing is I'm level setting here, DR, because there is a shared passion across the three of us, certainly around AI, leveraging AI to 10x, 100x your team, your organization. But a necessary precondition is if you don't have an attitude and an environment that supports experimentation, you're fighting with one hand, so to speak. Your AI fluency and proficiency is going to be incredibly diminished if you don't have an attitude around smart, clever, rigorous experimentation, right? So I want to shift because I know you have a portfolio, as any experimenter does. You have a portfolio of experiments. I
Yeah.
want to, which is a good pun, by the way, in this environment, because you're a fashion designer. Fashion designers have portfolios. I'm a former finance guy. Finance people have portfolios. Henrik is an entrepreneur. He has a portfolio of, so it's like the word that connects our three worlds, right? Now, what I want to do is talk about your portfolio, not of designs, but of AI experiments. Would you show us or kind of walk us through a handful of experiments that you have commissioned on your team to drive insights with AI or to drive outcomes with AI?
Yeah, totally. It's become now the thing, like that people know I'm constantly testing them on something, not testing them, but testing something. So like people are excited about it now. So I get emails from people like, Diarra, you're going to love this. And then they show me something they tested or that they've done, whether it's the operations director showing me a new approach. He's trying to build this new demand planning tool, but there is no demand planning tool that can plan our demand because we're on demand. Like all the tools exist to plan finished goods. And he would share with me either on WhatsApp voice notes or in email, like things that he's thinking about and he want to test. And I just encourage them. And he's now taking this AI course because he's so fascinated about all the learnings. And this is not something I've encouraged at all. He's so excited that he's doing it. And when he joined us, he didn't even know ChatGPT a year and a half ago. And then same for the marketing team. They are consistently now. I used to be the one making them like a guide of everything I'm doing so that they can learn and copy from it and like get inspired. Now they are the ones doing that for me. It's like the student teaching the teacher. I feel like I'm their student now because they've gotten so excited about AI and texting that I'm constantly getting videos and photos and recordings of things. And some of them, I have no idea what it is, but I'm just so excited that they have this mindset. But some of the big experiments, I'm going to share a few that have had a huge impact. One of them happened in October. And as you know, I use a lot of AI. I mean, before AI, I used to use math to generate prints. So this idea
Yeah.
of generative design was like how I started my brand as a math teacher. And I used to generate these prints. So I would have options like this is a math generated print I did when I was a teacher. And I would put them on avatars and put them on social media and just ask people to vote, just so I would know what to get some signal as to what works. And that would allow me to order the fabrics and store them in the factory. And then maybe 6 months later, when I'm doing a collection, I would use those fabrics because I had signal. And that in itself was already groundbreaking. Like that
Oh,
was
it's radical in an industry where you need 18-month lead time. I mean, to cut it
exactly,
by, to cut a year out, it's got to be blasphemy to most industry insiders.
exactly. So that was like already groundbreaking. We took it a step further last month. And I think if I really execute this at scale, my life will probably change because even the team, when it happened, I got all these WhatsApps of like, Diarra is probably having her like, aha, crazy moments because they understood the impact. So the factory has all these wool fabrics. We are a resort wear brand. So we sell summer clothes, swimsuits, beautiful dresses. September and October are worst months because it's cold and people are not buying beautiful floral vacation. They're going on vacation. And we only have one design, a poncho. It's like a wrap cape thing. That's the only thing we have that's semi-warm. Everything else is floral and summery. So October is always the worst month. And everyone knows it. And we use that month to do strategy and other things to keep ourselves excited because revenues are always down on the website. And for our wholesale partners, they don't buy much from us from fall because our collection is not fall appropriate. So early in this once in October, I was like, morale is low. Sales are declining. It happens every year. I'm not freaked out. I know this is happening, but I know for the team that it is a small company. You see those things and you freak out. It's like, I need to find a way to motivate people, but also to use, get liquidity because, if you're a fashion and capital intensive company, you need cash flow. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to look at the factory in Senegal and I identified the fabrics is the highest inventory. Like we don't have any finished good inventory at DIARRABLU, but the factory in Senegal has fabrics because that's what we had before. And I used to test the fabrics before I produce them. But we have these wool fabrics that have been sitting there for 3 years because people don't come to us for wool. So I was like, I need to move these fabrics fast, but I don't know what to do with them and I don't know what to make out of them. So I just used AI and, went to Midjourney and created a few visuals of the capes we already know how to make, but in those wool colors. I made you slides for this. So basically, on the left, those are real capes we were selling last year in brown and black. So I know that people like capes, but we have a lot of excess fabric in the beige and in the blue in the factory. And it was like October week 1, web sales are declining, and I need to figure out exactly what people like so we can sell it fast. I have a proprietary tech app I built that creates this workflow so I can see things on avatars fast, which I developed a long time ago. But now with AI, I can see it on sketches and then put them on humans. So I put them on these AI models on the right and put them on Instagram stories. And within 24 hours, you can see the cream cape has 82% people said they would buy it. And the blue one has 73. And that's significant. Like in all the experiments I've run before, anything above 70% has a tendency to be a bestseller. I used to have like 4,000 people votes. It's the same statistical significance, even if it's 30 people voting. Like it's insane. And I have so much data on this. So I call up the head of operation and I'm like, we need to put this cream cake online, like ASAP.
And you
But
don't have this, you have bolts of wool fabric sitting in Senegal, but there's no actual product per se.
no, there's no
There's
product.
raw material. Yeah.
And it is the first time ever, and I think in this whole industry, like I think I need to talk about this in a bigger way, that I'm basically doing a sample sale of raw materials disguised as products. I'm just trying to sell the fabric and get it out of the factory. But I know that in the form of this wool cape in beige is going to do well, and the blue one too, but I was really betting on the beige. And for the first time, before I would do this and I would buy the fabric and sit on it, and 6 months later, I'll do a photo shoot and make a sample, whatever. I just use this AI photo and put it up on a sample sale website we're working with. And people bought this cape based on this picture. So for the first time, I'm selling something that doesn't exist based on an AI image, based on a product that doesn't exist, just based on raw materials and votes. And then the results here. Okay, so we looked at the sales from October 16 to 28, and the top seller is that cream cape. And the second one is a black one, which we knew from last year was going to be a good one anyway.
And this
but
is the top seller across all your different products.
Everything, including dresses, everything. Like I have over 100 SKUs, and this was the winner. And then I get the breakdown of where, like the cities, it's New York, Brooklyn, Miami, Los Angeles, Washington, Lynchburg. Like I have this all the states that it was purchased from. So people buy the cape, and then it goes into our supply chain. Like when you order a burger at a restaurant, and now the artisans are making them. So people have started receiving their capes now, but it was all produced once we got. So it's like a pre-order model, but on steroids, because I'm getting you're basically paying me for something that doesn't even exist. I haven't even made any investment on anything. It's like pure cash.
Can you, Diarra, for folks who, some of us may be more familiar with the way fashion works, really briefly, could you paint the picture for somebody who doesn't know how fashion works? When do you make cash outlays historically? What does your kind of cash position look like relative to this one? Because this is hugely different, but folks can't appreciate it unless they know what the norm is.
So in the fashion industry, just to give you an example, right now, like September was Fashion Week for spring 2026. I started the traditional development. If I'm following the fashion way, I started that development in April or March. So since March, I've been spending money to produce prototypes for September. I'm talking sampling fabrics, photo shoots, models, fit sessions to get my, 50 different SKUs. And then in September, what happened is that you fly to market. It's called Market Week or Fashion Week with a suitcase. You find a showroom or an agency, like a trade show, and you hang all your samples there. And for a week, buyers are coming in, Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom, the small boutiques on the corner, all of them, and they look at these 50 samples you have or however many, and they start making their selections. And I'll show you photos because I did it in September. So they do that for a week. Then you chase them down for 4 weeks to beg them to remember you to place an order. And if you're lucky, they'll place an order by the end of October. By the way, you still have no cash. Then you're going to deliver the order to them in March, and they'll pay you 60 days later. So by the time they pay you, it's been like a year of you putting cash flow out for prototyping, for the market, for the travels, for the agency, for your team, for the production order they made in bulk. And then they'll pay you probably sometime around June, because like most of them are like net 30, net 60. So you've just wasted 14 months of cash flow. And in this model, I did not do that. I got my cash in a week.
Where are you on then doing, like, is this now the new default for you? Like, why not just do all products this way?
I'm learning. The problem with this is that there's not a big acceptance yet in the industry with AI models. So I think I need to educate people, because the moment these people bought these capes thinking they are real capes on real people. I mean, they don't know, right? So there is something around AI that's really stigmatized in fashion where people just freak out that it's taking people's jobs. The moment anything AI is mentioned, people are like, oh my God, it's taking people's jobs, photographers are losing their job, designers are blah, blah, blah. And I think I want to document this properly and really share it with a very prominent fashion outlet and show how you're not taking people's jobs. You're giving them jobs that matter. Like my team that weekend or that week worked in dignity. They produced something that is not going to a landfill.
There's not only kind of the waste element, there's also this sense of pride of the thing I made is out there in the world. And what you're illuminating, which I didn't realize until now, is there's this, the canonical example is like the t-shirt of the team that didn't win the World Series that ends up in some other part of the world, saying that they won. Right. But that, if you think as a designer, that's like the ultimate waste of time, because I had to make a shirt that's actually untrue and they're not proud of it. The total opposite is, whoa, this thing that I made, people value and love. And that there's so much more. Not only there's not just a reduction of waste, there's not only an increase in liquidity, but there's also a sense of purpose for the team. And to be able to then close that loop with them is really cool.
Yeah, I think this is very profound. And I think, it has to be the way that a lot of goods are going to be made, right? On the bark, on the dog toy side, we've done this a few times where the one that kind of comes to mind is where we did it when the inauguration, Bernie was sitting with mittens on, and somebody
Yeah.
kind of like whipped up that as a dog toy internally. And then the social team just put it up and saying, hey, please convince our boss we should do this. And then same thing happened. Everybody went crazy about getting Bernie's mittens as dog toys. And then we sold quite a few of them before like they were produced, right? And I can imagine, like, obviously to your point, then you don't end up with a lot of wasted stuff. And these days you can produce a lot of stuff very fast. And so why not? But it's interesting, like when you increasingly, we had, what's it called? That website where you could put products on and then get people to pre-buy them. What's it? Oh, I'm blanking on the
Kickstarter?
name. Kickstarter. And I think a lot of us who bought stuff
Is
on
it
Kickstarter,
Kickstarter? Yeah.
yeah, Kickstarter, yeah. And I think a lot of times people have now bought these Kickstarter thing, and they weren't quite like the thing that we had hoped, right? It was clearly a version 1. And so it'll be interesting how all this play out, right? Because I can easily imagine that increasingly people will just render something on Midjourney, it'll look pretty, they'll put it on Instagram, they can sell it right away, then people get the product. It's not quite what they had hoped. Now, what's so unique with this, of course, is that what people bought was good quality wool that looked the way that they had expected it to. So then it's perfect. But I can only imagine that Instagram is going to be filled with basically made up stuff in the next few years. And you'll have to really trust that somebody like you with integrity sitting on the other side.
The difference is very important, though. The difference, because I was actually thinking about that, it's plausible that folks can generate an AI image to kind of do lead gen, so to speak, demand testing. The difference is Diarra's already established all of the just-in-time supply chain, right? She's the only one who can actually deliver on it. So folks may be able to do the kind of, call it lead gen or sales, AI-driven sales, but without all of the ability and capability that you've already built, you really built a defensible moat to be able to now use AI in the sales. Can you talk for a second about retail? It's one thing for you to go direct to the consumer. How does this affect relationships with retailers? Because I know that can introduce a big difference into the sales process.
Yeah. I think this leads to my experiment too, because this one that I share is like a D2C. It was actually a sample sale dropship website. So it's kind of like D2B2C because they have the volume, and that's how we could sell these so fast, because they have the traffic and we've listed it there for like a week. So that's my second experiment. And this was also the idea of like retail, like made for you versus traditional wholesale. So I explained to you how the industry works, and the calendar brands show their collection 6 months before in New York or Paris or Milan or like these big capitals. And they show it to buyers in these trade shows, like trade shows or basically fairs. And you have like a middleman in between. It's an agency or broker or somebody who has the relationships, and they invite all the buyers, and the buyers will come and touch the samples and experiment with them and see what they like. And you chase them for a month to get them to remember you, because they're going to see like 100 plus brands that week. So it's really painful. And I actually was always against that model. This year I decided to try it again, experiment, because I wanted to really understand it, because I went for my brand with no fashion background, and I always used this like tech first approach. So everything was always digital. All our partner stores were like, I mean, we work with Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, all the big retailers, but it's all digital in this model. And I've negotiated with them to accept to work this way. Like it took us a year and a half to get Nordstrom to convince them to allow us to do on demand. And I remember when they called us, they were like, you have tens of millions of inventory on our website, and we were very worried. And I was like, oh, none of that is real. Don't worry. It's experiment. It's like hypothetical based on raw materials, and it converts in a formula based on the fabric, it converts in inventory, but actually nothing. Don't worry about it. Like,
Hmm.
uh,
Wow.
so
Just totally broke their models. That's
yeah,
hysterical.
and they were just mind blown. And like that was the model that I ran, not because I knew any better, it's because I didn't know any better actually. I started from a blank slate and I just came in with what I thought was logical. Little did I know it was actually super interesting. But this year I was like, I want to understand how the other way works. So I'm gonna go to these market weeks, I'm gonna go to fashion week, I'm gonna go meet people in person, I'm gonna do the sampling. So I was doing these experiments in parallel. On one side, I'm doing my usual fail fast experiment AI generative way. On the other way, I'm doing it the traditional way while still doing the calendar and testing what that looks like. And the results are incredible. And this is what it looks like when you go in person. So you can see I'm like carrying suitcases from San Francisco to New York full of clothes that took 4 months to prototype. Then we go to this fancy penthouse. We set them up there for a week. We act all cutesy. Every day we're smiling all day. It's like a massive waste of time, if you ask me. But I want to do it. And I even had my mom fly in come in and see it.
Wow.
I love the human part because I get to meet the buyers from all over the world, shake hands with them, see how they think, how they touch things. And as I'm watching them from afar, I'm like, everything they are doing can be done with technology. Like they are looking at a dress from another brand because it's like 10 brands in the same space. And I'll hear them say something like, oh, it would be nice if the flower could be placed here. Oh, it would be nice if this could be pink. And I'm like, literally, I could just press a button and show it to you, but I'm just watching. So I'm seeing all these things I can solve with technology and the speed, which they have no idea because they reject it and they just think it's bad. So like they don't even open their mind to it. And then what happened is I did this. So these images are some of the items that were ordered when I first marketed in June. It was in resort for the resort collection. None of this is real. I mean, I made the prototypes in reality and I did the whole formal thing, but these images are not real. These models are not real. And these dresses are not real dresses on a shoot. But these things were bought by the buyers. So I have a very important retailer that I
You
talk.
showed them that. You told them that. Hey, just so you know, you guys just bought stuff that's not real.
Yeah, I told them that afterwards.
Hmm.
I didn't tell them. But afterwards I told them because like whatever this first dress with the shawl, it was the bestseller across the board. This image is not real. And the same buyers came to the fair and saw these dresses in person. But I showed them these photos and I was like, these photos after they bought it, it's like these photos are not real, these images are not real. But you bought these things. Once you bought them, I went and got these are the real photos I actually took. So I'm not getting rid of people's jobs. I'm not getting rid of models. I'm still shooting with doing my campaigns and all the stuff. But now I'm doing it with the stuff that people bought. I'm not shooting 100 things and wasting everybody's time and wasting all these resources. I'm shooting and photographing and capturing and doing the dreamy, magical stuff with the real deal that has signal, that has demand. So this is what the retailers bought. And I'm like, well, because you bought it, we made it for real. This is a photo shoot. It is real person, real model. And I went through this whole journey to understand it. So while I was doing that, the experiment was I found another retailer who's very forward thinking, and I didn't tell them I'm going to Fashion Week. I told them I'm going to design for them, and they should just tell me what they are looking for. So they gave me their mood boards and their colors, and I cannot mention their name yet. It will come out in the spring, but they gave me all of their information of what they are looking for, the trends, the colors, and I created, this was some of the things I showed them. This is all AI. But before I get here, I use my own proprietary tools to like do my sketches and my processes, whatever I built before that's really fast. And then I rendered it on AI and they were just voting. So like, it was very simple. I gave them a Google slide. I'm like, put a green dot on everything you like. And this is like the big buyers, the merchandisers, people who have the same power as my Instagram. Like one person is probably like 1,000 people because they're constantly buying stuff and selling stuff and they understand. So I developed a collection for them. The results were insane. It was 30x volume. So I did this whole headache. I went to New York. I carried the suitcases. I rented a hotel. I paid this agency. They take commissions on sale. We've had 100 plus buyers come in from all over the country. We did secure some really good sales, like that I'm proud of in terms of like relationships. The volumes were very small. And the difference between that way of doing things versus when I just reached out to one retailer, just one, and told them, I'm going to design what you want. Give me the price architecture you like so I can source the right materials for that price point. Give me the colors and the prints, and I'll come up with examples. And this is just one, but I gave them like 30 plus options because this AI, there's no limits.
Can I actually go on question on all this? I mean, like, it's obviously incredibly cool, and it seems to be the logical way of doing stuff within technology, right? Now, as I'm sure you will say, nobody's doing this yet. And I think we all know that this will be the way that it will be done at one point.
It
Could
has
you
to
maybe
be.
walk us through the steps of what will need to happen? And I guess mostly it's like, when do you think that the humans in the loop that are currently in the loop will kind of get around to this? Is it as simple as somebody like you will have to have massive success and then everybody will copy it? Or do you think that increasingly people are kind of getting their head around that made to order, like this is the way forward?
I think there are definitely a few key players in the industry who are thinking this way. And, I saw last week that OpenAI went to the CFDA, which is the Council of Fashion Designers America, and did like some presentation just to show how you can use AI to prototype and like those things that most designers reject. Because earlier this year, I went to speak at fashion school at FIT, New York, and I talked about my work from the math standpoint. So when I say I use math equations to generate prints, everyone is mind blown and claps. The moment the word AI comes up, people's faces, you can see the switch of disappointment and grief immediately. And it's like the concept is the same. It's using a generative process that saves you time to get something faster and then decide if that thing is good enough before you actually move forward. It's literally, I'm just trying to fail faster than everyone else. That's it. But if it's done with math and generative, anything that sounds not AI, it's mind blowing. The moment the word AI comes in, it cheapens the whole thing. And literally, that's how it's branded. It's like it's cheap and it's not artistic and it's like a button and it's whatever. So I think that mindset really has to shift because you could use all the AI tools in the world. You will never get these images I just showed you because there's a lot of work behind it that comes from taste, that comes from being a designer, that comes from being an artist, that comes from culture, that comes from my upbringing, that comes from just understanding design based on my brand's DNA. And before I get to this render, I've probably done like 20 steps before where I had a sketch, I drew something, I use art, I have an app to render it quickly on like a sketch-based version, and then I can put it in ChatGPT or Midjourney or any tool to get it on a person. So people just assume you press a button, but I think the AI hides all the creative human work that gets you to get dressed like this with a print. This print was actually one of my math prints from before. So if you want to give me credit because I say I'm a mathematician, sure, it's still here.
I really think this point is very profound, and because I think it's not just in fashion. I think it's anywhere else. I'll give you an example. I'm building this other product, and we were having the debate this week of basically we will go over to, let's call it like a vibe coded kind of first principle, where it used to be when you build software, often a founder, assuming it's not a non-engineer founder, will kind of like articulate whatever the problem is for the customer and then articulate some kind of way to solve it. And then you often go through a product head or something like that, and then they will spec some features out, and then it'll go to the engineering team. The engineer will build it. Then there'll be some, testing, and then you'll go back, right? Now, obviously, increasingly, the non-technical founder will be able to vibe code a feature really fast, and then
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for," and then it'll all be spaghetti code and be all these things that, which is true. And then he or she will also just break it immediately by writing a prompt. And then obviously the bot will kind of like ruin it. And then they won't necessarily know how to get it back. There's all these issues with it. But I do think there's a very fair argument that you will see many companies now, software companies, being built basically by non-engineering folks. That will
Yeah.
be the prime kind of originator of features. And then you'll have to have engineering people involved to make sure that it works, and that's breaks the law. But I am curious on how fast that change is going to be. I think you're articulating it very well, obviously for fashion. I think I see it in technology and in like engineering, and we see it with pet stuff, with bark and stuff like that. But there's this real tension that I think you are describing, which is very real. Like people get not just slightly upset, people get angry
They
about
get
the
angry.
whole premise that basically non-craft people
Yeah.
can now go out and create craft. And
Oh,
I
wait,
think
but
that,
that's not, hang on. That's not what Henry, correct me if I'm wrong. Diarra, you're saying the very people who can create the craft are resistant. You're saying it's not just push a button, that nobody in the world can just make a DIARRABLU dress,
but
that it
I think
involves
that's the
tons of
subtlety. I think that
experience
is the subtlety.
and
I think that
nuance.
people are and obviously, Tara, tell me I'm wrong. When Diarra goes out to a fashion school and there's a bunch of designers there, I think there is, and I think in fashion, it's a little bit different because they're often the fashion designer is also the founder, and then, they have the ability to make the drawings themselves. But for many people now, you'll have somebody who have great taste, who have like the buyers that you mentioned, who knows about colors, who knows about patterns, but what they do not know is how to whip up a piece of paper and then draw the thing. And they will now be able to become the fashion designer because they'll be able to instruct a bot to kind of like produce this thing. And I at least see that in many areas right now, that is hugely confusing and kind of like create a lot of agitation for people, because now it can be people who don't understand the original core craft are now able to be the originator and the producer of this kind of creative development.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is both that and what Jeremy describes. I think you have people who don't have the craft who can now be creative directors. That's the word. And every fashion house has a creative director. That's the face. Like most designers, actually, many creative directors are not designers. Like if you look at the big houses, like right now, Louis Vuitton's men's creative director is Pharrell Williams. He's an artist, he's a musician, but I'm pretty sure he didn't go to fashion school or sketches. But his vision and his taste is what makes him the creative director. And then he hires a bunch of designers who are actually technical and sit down and draw things. And there's all these different types of designers. And you have the actual like silhouettes designers, you have the technical designers, you have the textile designers, and those jobs are still valid. As a matter of fact, they are even more relevant now because the volume of what you can create is so high, but you need somebody to execute it to make the dress you're going to receive match the idea you had. And I think that's where people are losing the plot, is that I said this to the students too. And back to Jeremy's point, I also met a designer recently, very talented designer. Like he does luxury dresses that are like $20,000. And I was asking him how his business is doing. And he said cash flow is tough because sampling is expensive. So I said, why do you have to sample dresses that cost $20,000? Like that sounds so silly to me. And he's like, well, these high profile customers, they want to see something that they can touch and understand. And then they'll decide if they want the beading on this side. And I'm like, would you be open to using AI to do that? And he's like, AI can never replace me, girl. And I said, no, it's not replacing you. It's going to replace all that wasted time that you show them what they don't like. So the real thing that they will like will come from you, but you're going to learn what they don't like faster versus wasting time making all these prototypes they don't like. And then he
Yeah.
paused for a second and he's like, oh, I'm like, yeah, it's never going to replace you, but it will replace all the waste that you're doing in terms of time, beats, resources. And he's like, well, if you're going to teach me, sure. And I'm like,
Diarra, you know who's going to replace him? We're saying the same thing, but coming at it from different angles.
yeah,
Henrik, it's true what you're saying, that there's a democratization element.
yeah,
And it's also true what Diarra started out by saying, which is that the people who are primed to leverage the technology the most, who are primed to be the most augmented, are ironically the most resistant. And
yeah,
what you should have said, Diarra, to this guy is AI is not going to replace you. Now, someone like you who's AI native is going to be the person who sells the next $20,000 dress. And if you don't disrupt yourself, for sure, someone who's AI native will. But you have this, $20,000 dress designer as all of the requisite
But
context
let me
and
throw like
expertise.
a counter to that argument, during, because I agree, but I cannot, as we know, some models work basically where they output something and then you have a version model that basically kind of decides, right? And so the way that we create, for example, imagery of people who look at something is that the model will create like a gazillion versions, and then another model will say that one looks like a human. Now, it's not difficult to imagine a world where I let out a bunch of agents that just design stuff, and not just one design here. And I don't have tastes in the same way that Era has. So I'll just create 1,000 of them, and then I'll put them on Facebook, and Facebook's model will basically put a few of them in front of it. And so then suddenly something will kind of happen because there will be 1,000 different versions, and one of them by chance is going to resonate with some people,
yeah.
maybe. And so there you could have a scenario where suddenly you have taken the human element of it, because you basically just created kind of like the math model of saying, if you create 1,000 dresses, then you'll find customers on the internet if you show it to enough people.
Yeah. And I think that's valid. The problem is that if you make that really at scale, then the whole world is going to be creating 1,000 dresses that are going to start being very similar because, all these AI models kind of think the same way. And what's going to stand out is that craft person who knows how to create a dress that is not yet trained because they are thinking outside of the box. And I think back to Jeremy's point, if that person amplifies themselves with AI, they will be unstoppable. So I think when I went to the school, that's what I was telling them. I'm like, AI is not going to replace you. It's going to amplify you and make you so unstoppable because now everybody has the same tools, but your advantage of having gone to fashion school or having taste or understanding creations or trends makes you even, I feel like AI is a level playing field, but like it only amplifies what you are already.
It's going back to the Iron Man spacesuit. We talked about this with Nick Thompson, the CEO of the Atlantic. It's like your underlying strength matters, Henrik. You and I both know this. And
Yeah,
if you can, and it's so AI can 10x anybody, but do you want to be 10x on your 100-pound bench press, or do you want to be 10x on your 300-pound bench press?
exactly.
And if you're able to do more, if you're able to process more, if you have more taste or whatever, then you are a person. Now, by the way, a human who's 100 pound bench presser who gets 10x will outperform the 300-pound bench presser who resists the technology.
And I think that's what's happening. That's what they are looking at right now. You have the very talented designers who are like 1,000-pound bench pressers.
Yeah.
And then over time, if they don't upskill and use technology to their advantage, the 100-pound bench presser can be 20x in front of
Yeah.
them.
You know what's daunting on me? I think what people, when they get scared, when they get angry, I wonder if people are just getting angry. It's basically the imposter syndrome that gets them scared. What they're really saying is, I might not have the originality that allow me to use my taste to pick something that is truly original. And so what I have right now is the moat that it's technically difficult to do this. And when everybody, quote unquote, can do it, then I might just be
Average.
mediocre and there for somebody else. And that makes me angry.
Yeah. And I think there's also another element, and this came up in schools. It was the fact that the students were saying, like, they were very happy about the examples of how I'm using AI because I shared the whole sustainability and waste and like a decision. It's more like an operating system for me. It's not replacing creativity. It's like operationalizing it so that it makes sense. And a lot of the students were saying what was hard for them at first was that they go to school for 4 years to study something, and that somebody who didn't do that training can just go press a button. And I could understand that frustration. Like, I think it's very logical to feel that way. And I think the reframe was, now you have 4 years ahead of those people of knowledge that if you go and do the training of what they do, you're going to amplify even more than them. And that's kind of how I got them to be excited to be like, okay, how do we start? And I think it has to be, back to your original question, what's going to make this industry shift? It has to be at the very beginning. It has to be in education. Like the teachers at these fashion schools need to amplify. And I met a teacher at FIT actually who's trying to do that. She created a course called AI and Ethics in Fashion Design. She asked me to come and support a bit. I didn't really have the time, but I really like what she was doing because a lot of these teachers are also from an older generation where the sketching and the craft, they even reject, like some of them reject using computers to render things, even outside of AI, because the craft is about the touching and the art and the magic. And I think it has to start at the schools because that's where people's minds get shaped. As a former teacher, what happened in the classroom is what you believe in. And if your teacher can amplify you and tell you, hey, you're amazing as you are, imagine how much you can amplify that awesomeness and nobody can take that from you. But yes, it's like the person who goes to the gym every day and trains is going to outperform you eventually, no matter how fit you are if you don't do anything about that fitness. So I think it has to start there. And I also think in terms of the industry, I'm thinking about it both ways. As a matter of fact, my last experiment, which I want to share, is the one that I'm working on right now, which is how do I operationalize all the things I've been learning with DIARRABLU and all these experiments and turn them into a product and a separate company that allows other brands to just leverage it. And I've been really thinking about how do I do it in a way that's still human, that feels empowering, that has the right values, but it's also built by the right team. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, if I do this, who am I proposing it to? Is this a tool that I sell to like a Nordstrom or Bloomingdale's because they have the volume and they can make the noise? Or is it something I go and bring on TikTok to all these small creators who are starting out and give them an opportunity to just launch a fashion brand from their bedrooms? And I've been thinking about it a lot. And I'm quite, to be honest, I'm still like ideating on the best way and who needs it. Because the established brands already have their systems. They are traditional, old, and wasteful, but that's what they know. So my way of testing this is now I'm like this experiment I just showed you when I 30x my wholesale volume with this retailer. I want to use that as a case study to other retailers and see who bites, and then use that as an opportunity to have this conversation with them, just like I'm having on this podcast, and really share. Just so you know, these are the experiments I've been running. I know all the pain points they all have. It's all waste. It's all cash flow. Everybody's trying to guess what people are going to want in 6 months all the time, which is the silliest thing because people don't even know what they're going to want tomorrow. But like you make big decisions, billions of dollars, lots of ways based on guessing what people are going to want in 6 months. And then 6 months later, you realize you were a little bit wrong and things go on sale. Anytime you see a sale, it means people were wrong with the guessing.
We were wrong.
We were
Our
wrong. We're
model
going to
was
go
off.
30% off. We were very wrong. We're going to go 50%. We are super wrong. We're going to go on clearance 80%. So I want to have this conversation and see who's resonating with it kind of and understand how to shape it. But I genuinely, in this last 5 years of doing these experiments and learning, and I think back to what Jeremy said, I'm a sponge and I just absorb everything. I'm seeing the problem and I'm also very much aware of the solution because I've solved it for myself. I'm solving it every day and killing and like hurting myself sometimes, but I want to solve it at scale now. And I think that's my new challenge. Um, yeah.
Professor, I have two hands raised. So as everybody knows, Diarra was my former student who's now my hero and professor. And I'm asking you, may I take the mic as a professor for a moment here, Diarra? Because you're my teacher. Now I want to flip the roles. And maybe it's obvious to you. I can't help but say, like, will you go back a few slides here, even in your presentation?
Yeah. Let's see.
Because I want to show you something. Go back to the poll. One more, I think. Or yeah, there. Diarra, I hope I'm going to give you a gift right now. What is the equivalent of doing this to make that decision? Should you give this tech to Nordstrom or to TikTok creators? I wonder if you already have the instincts and ability to pre-sell and to pre-gauge the market to answer that question.
Oh, you're saying to Paul,
Diarra, you already know how to do it. Now just do it for a different product in a different market.
oh, okay. You just okay. Now I feel like I need to turn the camera off and stab my like, happy. Then I'm just having an aha moment, but like it's being captured on camera and doesn't look pretty. Well, okay, Jeremy, we have a call at 2 p.m. So we're gonna talk about this.
All right. All right. Hey, I'm just saying once,
Yeah.
it feels like you have the keys to the answer to this question actually in your hand uniquely,
Yeah.
and you hadn't thought about connecting the two. We could go on and on forever, obviously. Is there anything that we didn't cover? I know you had prepared a few examples, but is there anything I would love, maybe we could end on this because it's an interesting personal note, and then we should wrap out of the interest of your time and also listeners. We've heard from folks, they love it that these conversations usually don't go beyond an hour. So that's something we try to stick with. But tell us about burnout, mental health, sustainability, because I think for a lot of people, when they hear you can do more, you can do more, you can do more, it's like, oh, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. Can you
Yeah.
talk about how you maintain peace and health and vibrancy in the midst? You've also, I think on our last conversation, you mentioned how you're pulling more all-nighters than ever before because you're just so stinking excited, right? So what does it look like? What is sustainability personally, not just from a fashion brand perspective, but from a human perspective? What does that look like in the age of AI?
I think it's been proved quite a bit. You remember last time we had a conversation, I was telling you how I'm not sleeping and I'm so excited. It was like I'm on a creative high all the time while also having real operational job to do. And it was really hard to navigate. On one hand, I'm excited, I'm testing all these things and I feel like I'm unstoppable. But on the other hand, my brain is just tired and I'm like overloading the team with all these experiments and no structure and they're all over the place. And this year I was like, you know what? I want these systems to actually work, not just for the company and for the industry, but for my own health. And this is the first year in my life that I feel like I'm a healthy, balanced person. Like I've been actively working out more. I've lost 15 pounds this year, building muscles. I'm eating better. I'm traveling less, which is before I used to associate traveling with like, I'm killing it. I'm adrenaline on a plane or this and that. I've said no to so many things.
Huh.
And last time I missed the podcast because I was pulling an all-nighter doing a photo shoot in South Africa. Before, I would want to be everywhere. And I'll show you how I use AI to get more sleep now. Is that I find really good people around the world who can do, for example, the creative stuff. Directing a photo shoot requires me to be there. Like I'm the creative director. I know how they want to pause. But now I'm like, I'm going to leverage these people who are way smarter than me at executing because I'm not a good executor when I'm in the creative space. And this was the villa we got in South Africa. And I was directing the shoot. And I was like, I can pull an all-nighter, which is not the healthiest thing to do. Or I could waste 2 weeks of my schedule flying to South Africa, being off in terms of time zone, having to mess up my diet, my exercise, be off with my work, and then just for a photo shoot. So I chose all-nighter was better. So I still did an all-nighter, missed the podcast as a result. But this is how I was directing it. I was literally drawing 6 stick figures in different places of the villa with the pauses I wanted, and then using my AI renders of my models, this is not real, to like explain to them, this is how I want her to stand, where, this is how I want her to pause when she sits with the stick figure. It was very silly, but it worked. Look at, these are the final images.
Wow.
There's way more, but like just to show you an example, I did not go to South Africa. I directed the shoot in 10 hours from my bedroom. And AI was helping me live give them exactly what I wanted in terms of pauses. And it wasn't even a Zoom call, it was on WhatsApp. So I'm a WhatsApp group. There's a person in the shoot who's meant to be the WhatsApp person. And she's just live taking photos of what's going on and sending it to me live. And I'm just plugging it into this Mid-Journey ChatGPT, creating videos, movements, and just giving them the feedback.
Wow.
But I didn't have to mess up my sleep or get on a
Yeah,
flight.
that's so cool. You know, it reminds me of something that Virgil Abloh said once. He was talking about designing from his iPhoto.
Yeah,
He's
his
saying
iPhoto,
yeah,
yeah.
he's saying my iPhoto is the way that I design. And he said, I'm just marking stuff up with my finger and I'm sending it to the team.
Because I'm like, what, if you think about it, what is design? It's translating a language of things that you see for other people to like construct and show to the world. And I think we overcomplicate it sometimes with all these steps. Like the magic is in the seeing, is in the vision. Nobody's going to ever replace that. Like you can go to South Africa and direct the shoot, your images will be completely different from me. But I realized that my biggest blessing is my ability to dream and see beauty in things that people might not see. But now I get to capture that in a healthier way. And yeah, I'm like, as much as I can automate things, delegate them, train people to do them better, and just kind of have more, I'm not going to say ease. I work a lot still, but I'm a little calmer and I prioritize my health way more than I used to before. Like I'm not trying to do everything all the time at all times anymore. And I find it possible with a lot of these AI tools have helped me quite a lot and helped my team too. So yeah, I'm excited for the next chapter. I'm excited for this new company I want to build. I'm terrified because I know how hard building something is. And I'm really trying to think, how do I build something now differently where I optimize for, I mean, now, of course, you want to optimize for the typical things that companies optimize for, but how can I also optimize for joy and like ease, peace while doing these things? Like, how do you build the next big company, but differently? That's been my big philosophical questions lately.
And we'll have you back on in another 18 months and you can share
Probably
the next
about the
update.
new company. We'll see.
Brilliant.
Okay, Jeremy Utley.
Dude, Jeremy Utley. That's Henrik's Jeremy Eleanor Rigby remix. Gray album? What would you call it? Okay, so if Danger Mouse created the Gray album as the mashup between the White album and the Black album, you're more of a green guy than the black. So like, what would your mashup be? Would it be the Lime album? I don't know. I'm just thinking.
I'll take the Lime album. I think that. Okay. Back to business though, Professor.
Diarra, I mean, first of all, I love students who become heroes, and Diarra certainly fits the bill. Student who's become a hero, just incredible founder. I mean, when we talked to her 18 months ago, she was ahead of the curve, and I think she's only stayed farther ahead of the curve now. She's accelerating, which is really exciting. And to hear some of her more recent updates are super fun. You know, one word that she used, which I loved, and I wrote down to talk with you about later, is the word yet. Yet. She said that at the beginning, right? I can't do that yet. And that I have found is a hallmark of a growth mindset. You talk about the classic kind of growth versus fixed mindset. One of the ways it's manifested, as I understand it, is the use of the word yet implies someone has the expectation of progress. And I just love that she started there because so much of her personality and potential gets unleashed by that sense of she is someone in motion making progress. And I think for anybody who feels stuck, adding the word yet to your statements, especially about your abilities, I can't launch a fashion design company yet, is a totally different posture. Anyway, that's one word that I think has enormous power.
I mean, like we talk a lot about experimentation on the podcast. I think sometimes it's, as we talked about in the conversation here, sometimes it's misused a little bit because it's kind of like becomes the excuse for mediocre kind of like ideas and a little bit like also just, I was just testing. So I think there's two things which if we double click on the experimentation part, I thought was interesting. The one thing is that she kind of talks about how she's helping specifically some of our junior folks with the origination, which I think is interesting because I think there's been like this kind of business practice for many years was like, I'll just set overall goals and I'll just let my team do their thing. Right. And I do
Mm,
get the sense that Yara is like active in her brainstorm and
mm,
probably even has like a strong voice, I would imagine too. But on the flip side, I think she also is aware of her abundance of ideas. And, she talks about how she's like, I don't know if she said they used all over the place, but she used kind of terms realizing that she kind of has a lot of ideas and a lot of stuff going on. And so she asked her staff to help manage output, right? Which is obviously a very kind and not very forceful approach. And so I thought there was an interesting dualism in her approach to experimentation, which is it's okay to be somewhat explicit with some of the ideas that you have for what people should experiment with. But there's also kind of like a stand where you can say, but I realize I also say a lot of different things. And maybe I'm just saying all this because it resonated a lot with me. So you have to manage me back when I come with 10
mm.
different things that you can't kind of like run experiments on. Maybe just manage me back and saying, hey, here's the 2 things I heard that I like the most from all these ideas you had. And those are the ones I'm going to test for next week.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I love the fact that the culture of experimentation leads people to be excited about sharing ideas. She
Mm,
mentioned, her operations lead who's going, "Oh, you got to see this. I'm creating this tool." But having that, leading with that kind of attitude has a ripple effect on others that they start sharing work in progress. They start sharing ideas that are maybe outside of their lane. And it has a really fabulous impact on culture when the founder is the kind of person who says, "You actually manage me." It allows other people, I think, to have that attitude too, which I thought was
I
cool.
saw this beautiful episode. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Bourdain's, and he have an episode where he goes to Denmark to visit Noma, and this is an old episode, obviously because he's not been here for a while. And in that episode, there's a scene where they, after final close of the restaurant, which probably is like 11 o'clock midnight, every week, all the chefs at the restaurant stay back and they show different things that they have, like different ideas they have, like experiments. And they do it in front of everybody else. And then they talk about them. And Rene, who owns the restaurant, then critiques it. And what was also beautiful is after that, so one is like this whole kind of idea. We're all here to try to come up with great things and do great work. Now, at one point, Anthony Bourdain says, "Oh, what are you going to do? Are you then going to put like, if somebody does something really well, are you going to put it on the menu?" And he goes like, "Of course not." He goes like, "What do you mean?" He goes like, "Well, this is their dish. This is not my dish to put in my restaurant. This is their
Mhm.
dish to put
Oh,
on
wow.
wherever they want to do, right?" Which I thought was like such a beautiful thing that they were not out there to mine new ideas to just
Uh,
make his restaurant better. They were here for the intellectual interestingness of trying to come up with great stuff. And then when they came across it was theirs to keep, which I thought was like such an interesting stuff. And so I think
yes,
there's also
beautiful.
the idea, which kind of made me think more about as business owners, we should probably allow people to experiment more with their own things, like have their own side project
Uh.
they're working on, which they should be allowed to be just theirs, because that by experimenting something that is just theirs, they probably lean even more into it. And then I'm sure they'll come up with ideas then that is useful for the business, but doesn't have to be that direct idea that they kind of were talking
Right.
about.
One of the things that I wrote down, this is kind of like a mantra, but I wrote down, your life is your preparation. And there's something to the conversation we were having about folks being intimidated maybe by how fast younger people are getting up the learning curve. Or we talked about the experienced designer who's gone, wait, the person who can lift 300 pounds, but somebody who can only lift 100, if AI is going to be 10xing them, they're going to be able to outperform. And Giara's comment that you've already done the hard work. Learning how to collaborate with AI is actually not the hard work. You have done the thing that can't be replicated. You're able to bench 300 pounds right now. Imagine what will happen if you get unleashed. And I really liked that kind of, that felt like a very uplifting statement. Like, your life is the training. You've been training. Now use AI to get the supercharge, use AI to get the uplift, the augmentation. That was really cool. And the last thing that I wrote down that I thought was kind of interesting is just this validating of the novice perspective or the kind of naivete as you know, I'm a glutton for kind of origin stories of innovation, and so many great origin stories come from the person who doesn't know that it shouldn't be done that way. And Diarra said, that's one thing she said is like, I did this because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to, you know? And you said, I mean, it seems like that's the way that everybody should do it. And she goes, well, that's not how the industry does it. And the only reason I did it is because I didn't know you weren't supposed to. And I
Hmm.
think that just vindicating and validating, sometimes not knowing, is really important. So is, acquiring knowledge and apprenticeship and all that stuff. It's these things, they seem to contradict, but they don't. That your naivete or your fresh perspective is sometimes a tremendous advantage to see an existing system in a new way. And there are tons of examples of this throughout the history of innovation. I just love seeing it before our eyes with how she's disrupting the fashion industry.
The last thing I added, which I think is building on that, is this kind of like world that I think started way back in making an easy landing page day where, I mean, I remember the first bark box we did, that was just a photoshopped kind of box, right? Like there wasn't really a bark box at the time where I went out to a dog park and tried to sell it to people with my co-founders. Now, obviously now you can just render that very fast. You can make a website, all these different things. And so I wrote this post a long time ago about morality versus virality, about where do we as founders feel we have a responsibility to the people that we are asking to serve, the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And what's nice about this example is that she already have the raw material. She already have, to your point, the system on which she can make this thing come to life. And so she feels very comfortable that she can actually go out and sell it and then actually deliver on it. But some people without her ethics might not kind of feel like that. And so I am curious and scared and inspired by this whole next 2 or 3 years where I think the internet just will be filled all this stuff that is rendered. And we all will have to figure out how we navigate in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
as founders, for sure, because we'll get tempted to just
Stewardship. Yeah.
and then I think there, as we talked about and premise of the book and all that stuff, is relationship capital, like authenticity and authority and being a trusted partner is something that's going to matter a lot. Therefore, hopefully people will gravitate to it because the internet will also be transparent. So if you're somebody who just renders stuff and then don't deliver, you're going to have a short career.
Well said, Henrik. Well said.
Sounds like you wanted to stop the podcast. Well said.
No.
As in like, can I go now?
No, but I love, we got to keep that part in because that's hysterical. But it's funny, Henrik, you saying that is collaborators mine at Stanford for years, because like if you're in the middle of a lecture or whatever, sometimes you can lose track of time. And a shorthand that we used to use on stage was if while the other person is speaking, you say, that's really interesting. What that meant was, shut up, we've got to keep going.
You know what we
So
did?
you'd be like, and like you use it a few times, you'd be like, that is really interesting. Yeah, like that means be quiet. Right?
We have at Prehype, which is this kind of incubator product studio I worked in for a long time, we had this phrase called ELMO, which I think a partner of mine, Philip, kind of came up with, which is short for enough, let's move on.
Oh,
And
that's
so
good.
he would just go like, I'm going to throw an Elmo here. So in a very kind of non-threatening way, it was basically like, please shut up.
That's good. That's good.
There you go.
Elmo,
So we're Elmoing it until saying thank you.
Elmo, until further notice.
So until then, thank you so much for listening in. And as ever, do you want to do the begging today, Jeremy?
Begging, pleading.
For likes and subscribes and all that.
Yeah, just do it. Do the thing. Do the thing that By the way, I did notice on Apple Podcasts, we got a rude comment recently, which I would love to bury. So maybe we say the code word is bury the rudeness. And if you've made it this far and you haven't ever written a review, we need your help to bury the rudeness that is currently at the top of Apple Podcasts.
And with that,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.